You can feel it. The moment they walk into the room, the air changes, the energy shifts. Something inside you tightens, like an alarm ringing in the depths of your soul. Toxic people have a way of draining the life out of you, making you question your worth, your abilities, and innerpeace. But here's the truth: smart people don't let toxic people control their lives. They don't allow negativity to dictate their emotions. They don't surrender their power. Instead, they master the art of dealing with toxic people, protecting their energy, and walking away stronger than ever. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how they do it. Toxic people don't play fair. They manipulate, deceive, and twist reality to suit their own agendas. Their words are carefully chosen weapons, their actions a strategic dance designed to keep you off balance. They push you just far enough to make you feel uneasy, but not far enough to make you walk away, at least. Not right away. And that is where most people fall into the trap. They think they are dealing with someone rational, someone who can be reasoned with, someone who, if given enough kindness or patience, will eventually see the error of their ways. But that's not how it works. Toxic people thrive on confusion. They create drama, then act like they are the victims. They insult you, then tell you that you're overreacting. They break promises, then make you feel guilty for expecting them to keep their word. It's a game to them. And if you don't recognize the rules, you will always be the one losing. Smart people understand this. They see toxic behavior for what it is: a cycle, a pattern, a predictable set of tactics used to control, manipulate, and drain energy from those around them. And because they recognize the game, they refuse to play it. They don't get trapped in endless debates where the toxic person keeps shifting the goalposts. They don't waste energy trying to prove their worth to someone who is determined to make them feel small. They don't let themselves be pulled into the emotional roller coaster of guilt, anger, and self-doubt that toxic people specialize in creating. Instead, they stay calm. They observe. They remain aware. Awareness is the first and most powerful step in dealing with toxicity because it allows you to detach from the emotional chaos. Imagine someone trying to provoke you by pressing buttons they know will upset you. If you react, they win. If you get angry, cry, or defend yourself too much, they feel a sense of control. But if you step back, if you observe rather than engage, suddenly they lose their power. They can't manipulate you if you refuse to be manipulated. They can't confuse you if you refuse to be confused. Smart people practice this detachment. They see through the mind games and refuse to take the bait. They remind themselves that when someone tries to make them feel inferior, it says more about that person's insecurities than about their own worth. They don't take things personally because they understand that toxic behavior is never about them. It's about the toxic person's own unresolved issues, fears, and need for control. This doesn't mean they ignore toxic behavior or pretend it isn't happening. They acknowledge it. They call it what it is, but they don't let it consume them. They don't waste time wondering, why are they like this? Or what did I do to deserve this? Because they know that some people are simply committed to dysfunction. They know that no amount of kindness, patience, or reasoning will change someone who is determined to remain toxic. And because of this understanding, they take a different approach. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond with clarity. Instead of getting dragged into unnecessary arguments, they keep their communication direct and unemotional. When a toxic person tries to guilt trip them, they don't explain themselves endlessly or seek approval. They simply state their truth and move on. If a toxic person tries to twist their words, they don't waste energy defending themselves against distortions. They recognize the manipulation and refuse to participate. Toxic people thrive on confusion, so smart people make things crystal clear. They are firm in their words, strong in their actions, and unshaken by emotional manipulation. They do not allow gaslighting to work on them because they trust their own perception of reality. They do not allow toxic people to control the narrative of who they are because they know their worth. The most powerful response to a toxic person is not anger or revenge. It is indifference. When they see that their usual tactics no longer work, when they realize they can no longer pull you into their drama, they start losing interest. Toxic people need emotional reactions to fuel their behavior. When you stop providing that fuel, their influence over you weakens. This is why recognizing the game is so crucial. The moment you see through the manipulation, the control, and the emotional traps, you become free. The toxic person may not change, but they will lose their hold over you. And that is how you take back your power. Toxic people thrive where boundaries are weak. They push, they test, they manipulate. If you give them an inch, they take a mile. They are experts at finding the cracks in your resolve and slipping through them. One day they cross a small line and you let it slide. The next day they push a little further and you hesitate, unsure whether to confront them. Before you know it, your life is filled with their drama, their negativity, their chaos. This is how they operate. They don't crash through your doors with obvious hostility. They creep in slowly, subtly eroding your sense of control. Smart people don't allow this. They set firm, unbreakable boundaries and enforce them without guilt. They don't wait until the toxicity has consumed their peace. They stop it before it takes root. They understand that boundaries are not about controlling others, but about protecting themselves. They don't apologize for needing space, for saying no, or for choosing their mental well-being over someone else's demands. They recognize that not everyone deserves unlimited access to their energy, time, or emotions. Toxic people will always test boundaries. The moment you start setting limits, they will push back. They will make you feel guilty, call you selfish, or act like the victim. They might say things like, "You've changed. Why are you acting like this?" Or, "I thought you cared about me." They know exactly which emotional buttons to press to make you doubt yourself. But smart people don't fall for this manipulation. They don't let guilt dictate their decisions. They remind themselves that toxic people benefit when they feel guilty because guilt makes them easier to control. The most common way toxic people invade boundaries is through emotional manipulation. They may guilt trip you, play the victim, or use anger to intimidate you into compliance. Smart people recognize these tactics and refuse to engage. They don't explain themselves endlessly. They don't negotiate their boundaries. They don't let toxic people twist their words or make them feel like they are the problem. Instead, they state their boundaries clearly and stand by them. If they say no, they mean it. If they say they won't tolerate certain behaviors, they enforce it. There is no room for debate. One of the hardest things about setting boundaries is dealing with the discomfort that comes with it. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear conflict, rejection, or upsetting others. Toxic people sense this fear and exploit it. They rely on your discomfort to keep pushing their limits. But smart people understand that temporary discomfort is far better than long-term misery. They accept that some people will be upset, that some relationships may change, and that not everyone will like their boundaries. And they make peace with that. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others. They're also about saying yes to yourself. When you set strong boundaries, you create space for peace, for growth, for relationships that uplift rather than drain you. You stop feeling obligated to tolerate mistreatment just to keep the peace. You start valuing your well-being over someone else's expectations. You begin to choose yourself instead of constantly trying to please others. This shift is what separates those who remain trapped in toxic cycles from those who break free. Enforcing boundaries is not always easy. Toxic people will test you. They will push back harder the first few times you stand your ground. But the key is consistency. If you give in even once, they learn that your boundaries are negotiable, that they can break you down with enough pressure. Smart people don't allow this. They stay firm no matter how uncomfortable it gets. They understand that every time they uphold their boundaries, they strengthen their sense of self-worth. Another powerful aspect of boundary setting is learning to disengage. Not every battle is worth fighting. Toxic people love to drag you into unnecessary drama, to argue, to make you prove your worth over and over again. But smart people know that the strongest response is often silence. They don't waste energy explaining, justifying, or defending themselves to those who are committed to misunderstanding them. They state their boundary, and if it is not respected, they remove themselves from the situation. They understand that walking away is sometimes the most powerful statement they can make. Toxic people do not respect boundaries naturally. They have to be taught. And the only way to teach them is to enforce your limits with unwavering consistency. If you tell them you won't tolerate certain behaviors but keep making exceptions, they will never take you seriously. If you allow them to cross lines repeatedly, they will assume your boundaries are flexible. But if you remain firm, if you refuse to compromise your well-being, they will eventually realize that they cannot control you. Setting boundaries is not about shutting people out. It is about protecting what matters most: your peace, your energy, your self-respect. It is a statement that you value yourself enough to demand better. It is an act of self-love, a declaration that you will no longer tolerate anything that drains your spirit or dims your light. And when toxic people realize they no longer have control over you, when they see that you are no longer available for their manipulation, they lose their power. Because at the end of the day, the only way to truly win against toxicity is to refuse to play their game. Toxic people thrive on emotional reactions. They push buttons, trigger insecurities, and manipulate situations to get a response. They feed on drama and chaos, using it to keep control over others. When they can provoke anger, frustration, or self-doubt, they feel powerful. The more reactive you are, the more control they have over your emotions. This is why smart people do not give them what they want. They do not allow their emotions to be hijacked by someone else's negativity. They understand that staying in control of their emotions is the key to neutralizing toxic people's influence. When dealing with a toxic person, it's easy to fall into the trap of reacting immediately. They may insult you subtly, make passive-aggressive comments, or twist your words. They may try to guilt trip you, play the victim, or create unnecessary conflict. The natural instinct is to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to engage in a battle of words. But engaging emotionally only gives them more ammunition. The more you react, the more they manipulate the situation to make you look like the irrational one. Smart people recognize this game and refuse to play it. Instead of reacting, they pause. They take a step back mentally and assess the situation before responding. They remind themselves that toxic people do not argue in good faith, they argue to control. They stay calm, no matter how much the toxic person tries to provoke them. When a toxic person sees that their usual tactics aren't working, they often escalate their behavior. They will try harder to get a reaction. They will say things designed to make you feel guilty, insecure, or angry. They will bring up the past, twist your words, or even try to turn others against you. They are looking for an emotional explosion because that gives them control. But when they see that you remain calm, that their words no longer affect you, they lose power. Smart people understand that nothing frustrates a toxic person more than someone who refuses to be controlled emotionally. One of the most effective ways to maintain emotional control is through detachment. Instead of personalizing toxic behavior, smart people remind themselves that the problem is not with them, it is with the toxic person. They do not allow someone else's words or actions to dictate their self-worth. They do not take insults personally. They do not waste time trying to seek validation from someone who is determined to undermine them. They separate themselves emotionally from the toxic person's behavior, refusing to let it penetrate their peace. This detachment is not about indifference, it is about self-protection. Toxic people love to create urgency. They want you to react in the heat of the moment, to make impulsive decisions, to say things you might regret. But smart people do not operate on someone else's emotional timeline. They take their time. They process their emotions privately before responding. They do not let a toxic person's urgency force them into hasty actions or words. They maintain control by slowing things down, by refusing to be rushed into emotional reactions. Another way smart people maintain emotional control is by choosing their battles wisely. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every insult needs to be addressed. Toxic people try to bait others into endless arguments, draining them emotionally. Smart people recognize when a conversation is unproductive and disengage. They know that their energy is too valuable to be wasted on someone who has no intention of listening or understanding. They focus their energy on things that truly matter instead of getting caught up in petty conflicts designed to exhaust them. Self-awareness is a powerful tool when dealing with toxic people. Smart people understand their own emotional triggers. They know what kinds of comments or behaviors are likely to provoke them, and they prepare for them. They develop emotional resilience so that when a toxic person tries to manipulate them, they can remain unaffected. This self-awareness allows them to break free from old emotional patterns, preventing them from falling into the same traps over and over again. Toxic people want to see you lose control because it makes them feel powerful. But when you remain calm, when you refuse to react emotionally, you take away their power. They cannot manipulate someone who does not give them a reaction. They cannot control someone who refuses to engage in their mind games. When you master your emotions, you become untouchable. And when you become untouchable, toxic people realize they can no longer use you for their own benefit. They start losing interest. Because without emotional reactions to feed on, they have nothing left to control. Toxic people hate losing control. They manipulate, deceive, and twist reality to keep others trapped in a cycle of emotional turmoil. The moment they feel you pulling away, they panic. They will try to reel you back in with guilt, anger, or fake kindness. They will suddenly act as if they care, as if they have changed, or as if you are the one being unreasonable. But smart people don't fall for this. They understand that true strength is not just about recognizing toxicity, it's about having the courage to walk away and never look back. Walking away from a toxic person is not just a physical act, it's a mental and emotional decision. It's choosing to no longer be part of their manipulative games. It's refusing to engage, refusing to explain, refusing to let them drag you back into their chaos. It's cutting off the emotional supply that keeps them coming back. Toxic people thrive on reaction, on engagement, on knowing they still have access to your mind. But when you walk away completely, when you go silent and stop feeding their need for attention, you take away their power. One of the biggest challenges people face when trying to walk away is guilt. Toxic people are experts at making you feel like you owe them something. They remind you of the good times. They act as if they are the victim. They suddenly become affectionate or apologetic. They make you question your decision. They make you wonder if you're being too harsh. But smart people don't let guilt manipulate them into staying in toxic situations. They remind themselves that just because someone wants access to them doesn't mean they deserve it. They understand that someone else's feelings are not more important than their own peace. Toxic people often create an illusion of dependency. They act as if they can't survive without you, as if you are the only one who understands them, as if leaving them would be cruel. But smart people see through this emotional manipulation. They recognize that it is not their job to fix, save, or carry someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own actions. They understand that staying in a toxic situation out of guilt is not kindness, it is self-sacrifice. And they refuse to set themselves on fire to keep someone else warm. Another way toxic people try to prevent you from walking away is by provoking a reaction. When kindness and guilt don't work, they will turn to anger, threats, or blame. They will insult you, try to ruin your reputation, or make you feel like you are the problem. They will spread lies, twist the truth, or even try to make others turn against you. They want to pull you back in through emotional chaos. But smart people don't react. They don't fight unnecessary battles. They don't waste time trying to prove themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They let go. They trust that the truth will reveal itself in time. Silence is one of the most powerful tools against toxicity. Toxic people expect a fight. They expect long explanations, emotional breakdowns, or desperate attempts to reason with them. But when they are met with silence, they feel powerless. Smart people understand that silence is not weakness, it is control. It is refusing to be dragged into another cycle of manipulation. It is choosing peace over unnecessary conflict. It is creating a boundary so strong that toxic people have no choice but to move on. Walking away does not mean you don't care. It does not mean you didn't try. It means you value yourself enough to stop allowing someone else's toxicity to drain you. It means you are choosing to protect your energy, to focus on your own growth, and to surround yourself with people who uplift rather than destroy. It means you understand that not everyone deserves a place in your life, and that letting go is sometimes the best decision you can make. Toxic people will never willingly let go of someone they can control. But when you show them that you are no longer available for their mind games, when you walk away and never look back, they are left with no choice. They may try to replace you. They may try to make you regret your decision, but deep down, they will know they lost control. And that is what truly breaks them. Because at the end of the day, toxic people don't fear being alone. They fear losing the ability to manipulate, to control, and to drain the energy of others. And when you walk away for good, you take all of that away from them. Healing after dealing with toxic people is not just about moving on, it's about reclaiming your sense of self. Toxic relationships, whether with a friend, family member, or partner, take a toll on your emotional and mental well-being. They distort your perception of yourself, make you question your worth, and leave behind scars that can linger long after the toxic person is gone. Smart people know that cutting off toxicity is just the first step. True freedom comes from healing, from rebuilding, and from learning how to protect their peace moving forward. One of the most important parts of healing is self-reflection. Toxic people often make their victims feel responsible for the chaos they create. They twist reality, blame others for their actions, and leave you questioning yourself. Walking away from a toxic person doesn't immediately erase that self-doubt. It takes time to undo the damage. Smart people take that time. They reflect on what they tolerated, why they tolerated it, and what patterns they need to break to ensure they never fall into the same trap again. They don't dwell in blame either toward themselves or the toxic person. Instead, they use the experience as a lesson. They take what they have learned and use it to grow stronger. Healing also means rebuilding confidence. Toxic people have a way of making others feel small, powerless, or unworthy. They manipulate through criticism, subtle insults, and mind games that chip away at self-esteem over time. Even after they are gone, their words and actions can linger in your mind, making you doubt yourself long after the relationship has ended. Smart people work to reverse this damage. They actively rebuild their confidence by surrounding themselves with positivity, by focusing on their strengths, and by reminding themselves that they are more than the pain they experienced. They understand that their worth was never defined by the toxic person. It was always there, waiting to be rediscovered. Another essential part of healing is learning to trust again. Toxic relationships often leave people feeling guarded, afraid to open up, and hesitant to trust others. They create a sense of fear of being hurt again, fear of being manipulated, fear of repeating the same mistakes. Smart people don't let this fear control them. They acknowledge it, but they do not let it dictate their future. They take their time, they set stronger boundaries, and they learn to differentiate between those who uplift and those who drain. They do not punish new healthy relationships for the damage caused by toxic ones. Instead, they use the lessons from their past to build stronger, more fulfilling connections. Part of the healing process also involves changing your inner dialogue. Toxic people plant negative thoughts that can take root in your mind long after they are gone. They make you feel as if you are not good enough, as if you don't deserve happiness, as if you are incapable of standing on your own. Smart people recognize these thoughts for what they are: lies. They actively work to rewire their mindset. They replace self-doubt with self-belief, negativity with gratitude, and fear with strength. They remind themselves daily that they are in control of their own narrative, not the toxic person who tried to tear them down. Letting go of resentment is also key to healing. It is easy to hold on to anger, to replay past conversations, to think about all the ways you were wronged. But resentment only keeps you connected to the toxicity. It keeps you emotionally tied to someone who no longer deserves a place in your life. Smart people understand that forgiveness is not about excusing toxic behavior. It is about freeing themselves from the weight of it. They let go, not for the toxic person's sake, but for their own peace. They refuse to carry bitterness into their future. They choose peace over revenge, healing over holding on, and growth over staying stuck in past pain. Self-care becomes a priority in the healing process. Toxic relationships drain energy, leaving people mentally, emotionally, and even physically exhausted. Smart people recognize the importance of restoring their well-being. They engage in activities that bring them joy, that recharge their spirit, and that remind them of who they were before the toxicity entered their life. Whether it's reading, exercising, spending time in nature, meditating, or simply allowing themselves to rest without guilt, they make self-care non-negotiable. They understand that healing is not just about removing toxicity, it's about replacing it with positivity and purpose. The final stage of healing is embracing a new mindset, one where peace is a priority, where boundaries are unshakable, and where toxic people no longer have a place. Smart people emerge from their healing process stronger than before. They become more self-aware, more confident, and more intentional about who they allow into their allowing. They no longer tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or negativity. They understand that healing is not just about moving on, it's about becoming someone who will never settle for less than they deserve again. And that is the true victory over toxicity, not just escaping it, but thriving beyond it. Protecting your peace is not just about removing toxic people, it's about creating a life where negativity no longer has a place to thrive. It means being intentional about who you allow into your space, what kind of energy you accept, and how you respond to external negativity. Smart people don't just escape toxic situations, they build a shield around themselves so that toxicity never finds a way back in. They take full responsibility for their emotional well-being and create an environment where peace, growth, and positivity become the foundation of their lives. One of the most powerful ways to protect your peace is by setting firm boundaries. Toxic people thrive in environments where boundaries are weak or non-existent. They push limits, test patience, and manipulate their way into your space. But smart people understand that protecting their peace requires drawing clear lines. They decide what kind of behavior they will and will not tolerate. They refuse to engage with people who drain their energy, constantly complain, or bring unnecessary drama. They make no apologies for cutting off conversations, relationships, or environments that disturb their sense of calm. They stand firm in their decisions, knowing that peace is a choice that must be protected daily. Another way smart people maintain their peace is by controlling their reactions. They know that they cannot control how others act, but they can always control how they respond. When faced with negativity, they do not engage in unnecessary battles or waste energy trying to change people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They choose silence over arguments, logic over emotions, and distance over unnecessary confrontation. They recognize that every reaction is a choice, and they refuse to give their energy to people who thrive on conflict. By mastering their responses, they protect their inner world from being disturbed by external chaos. Protecting peace also means being mindful of your environment. The people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, and the energy you allow into your space all shape your mental and emotional state. Smart people carefully curate their environment to reflect the life they want to live. They avoid gossip, negativity, and toxic conversations. They unfollow social media accounts that trigger stress, anxiety, or comparison. They make sure their surroundings uplift and inspire them rather than drain them. They understand that peace is not just about avoiding negativity, but about actively creating an environment that nurtures growth, happiness, and stability. Self-awareness plays a critical role in maintaining peace. Smart people take the time to reflect on their emotions, triggers, and boundaries. They do not ignore stress or suppress emotions. They acknowledge them and address them in a healthy way. They practice self-regulation, ensuring that their inner world remains calm even when external situations become chaotic. They understand that peace is an inside job and that no external force has the power to disrupt it unless they allow it. They take responsibility for their emotional well-being by prioritizing self-care, meditation, or any practice that helps them stay grounded. Protecting peace also requires learning to let go. Holding on to past pain, grudges, or resentment only keeps toxic energy alive in your mind. Smart people do not waste time replaying negative experiences or carrying emotional baggage that no longer serves them. They understand that peace comes from accepting what has happened, learning from it, and moving forward without bitterness. They choose forgiveness, not for the sake of the toxic person, but for their own freedom. They let go of old wounds so that they can create space for new opportunities, joy, and personal growth. A crucial aspect of maintaining peace is choosing your battles wisely. Not every situation deserves a response, and not every negative person deserves your attention. Smart people do not waste energy on trivial conflicts or people who bring unnecessary drama into their lives. They know when to walk away, when to disengage, and when to stay silent. They prioritize their energy and invest it in things that truly matter rather than getting caught up in pointless arguments or situations that do not contribute to their growth. Lastly, smart people protect their peace by making intentional choices about how they spend their time. They do not allow toxic relationships, unfulfilling commitments, or draining activities to consume their energy. They focus on personal growth, meaningful relationships, and activities that bring them joy and fulfillment. They understand that time is the most valuable asset they have, and they refuse to waste it on anything that disrupts their well-being. They invest in themselves, nurture their passions, and build a life where peace is the standard, not the exception. Toxic people don't hold the power. You do. You hold the power to decide who gets access to your life. You hold the power to set boundaries that protect your peace. You hold the power to stay in control of your emotions, to focus on your growth, and to walk away from anything that no longer serves you. This is how smart people treat toxic people. They don't fight. They don't beg. They don't lose themselves in the chaos. They rise above it. They take back their power. And they keep moving forward stronger, wiser, and freer than ever before.